Well, an acquisition is whereby a company goes through and physically purchases the shares in another company. So what you've seen in F7. P goes through and acquires more than 50% of the shares in the subsidiary. P controls S. We now have a group of companies and there has been an acquisition. Examples that we could have there, a recent acquisition that there was Hershey's, the US confectioner, went through there and bought controlling interest number of shares within the UK confectioner Cadbury's. Growth via acquisition. If we go through and look at a merger is similar to an acquisition. However, what we have is not one company going through and acquiring the shares within another. It's the bringing together of two companies to go through and form one individual company. There isn't one company gaining control of the shares in the other to go through and form that group. So here, what we have is whereby there is a business combination to create a single company. And a lot of the time, the previous companies tend to go through and cease to exist. Now, a very recent example that we have here in terms of a merger is the merger of British Airways and Iberia. They are going to go through there and produce a global alliance, a global airline that will be able to go through and hopefully generate more wealth for the shareholders in Iberia and the shareholders in British Airways. Neither Iberia nor British Airways are going through and acquiring shares in each other. It's just there, the bringing together of the two businesses to form one overall larger company. So let's go through and have a look at what the advantages are of an acquisition as opposed to growing organically, and then let's look then at a little bit more detail behind what a merger entails. The advantages that we have in terms of an acquisition, first of all, is that we have a reduction in your competition. If you think about EasyJet going through and acquiring the shares within Go, then what happened all of a sudden is instead of Go and EasyJet competing on the same European short-haul routes, what we had then was EasyJet operating both routes and being able to go through and generate more revenue, increasing the cash flows, increasing the value of the business. Second reason for pursuing growth via acquisition is there as a reduction of the barriers to entry. Now there, the barriers to entry that we may have may be to do with landing rights. If we take an example of maybe some large international airports, maybe Barcelona, Milan, Rome, places maybe where EasyJet didn't previously operate, as it was too difficult to acquire the landing slots at those already very busy airports. But by going through and acquiring Go, what EasyJet was able to do was to get those landing slots and remove that barrier to entry into that market. All of a sudden, then what we saw was an increase in the revenues of EasyJet and further growth into the future. Growth via acquisition can also be seen to be a bit quicker than organic growth. Why? Well, if we think there again about EasyJet and Go, being able to go through and acquire Go as your own subsidiary meant then that EasyJet had access to those landing rights immediately. It was just a simple transfer of the names that helped them to go through and gain access to those landing rights. The fourth and final reason as to why acquisition may be seen as more beneficial is the fact there that we have access to synergies. The old 2 + 2 = 5. I know it doesn't equal 5, it's clearly equal to 4, but it's saying there that there are benefits that arise from the acquisition. We'll see a little bit more detail about synergy within the next session, but think about synergy there as trying to eliminate inefficiencies, trying to improve the revenues, trying to make some form of cost savings. Again, using EasyJet as an example, EasyJet would no longer have needed to carry on with 2 maintenance departments to operate its airlines. It would go through, increase the revenue by having more flights, but it would only need there 1 maintenance team. making huge savings and generating much more wealth for the shareholders. But before we go through and start looking at any synergies, let's just go through and stick with the theme of organic growth, acquisitions and mergers, and have a look at the different type of mergers that there may be. Now, we have three different types of mergers: horizontal, vertical and conglomerates. What are the difference between them? Well, a horizontal merger is whereby we have a merger with a company that has similar goods or services. So the example that we had before in terms of Iberia and British Airways coming together to form one company, they have similar services, the provision of airline services. In terms of your vertical mergers, well, that there is merging with either a supplier or a distributor. So there's many examples here. The final type of merger is what's referred to there as a conglomerate merger, whereby that is a merger between two totally unrelated companies. Let's just make up an example. Imagine there that EasyJet went through and merged with Tesco's. Tesco's, supermarket chain, EasyJet, low-cost airline, totally unrelated. There we have it, the three different types of merger.